I was not ready. I gestured and it went, but I'm just going to go with it. I was just looking over the things I had written down and was thinking, and I gestured and it went, but let's just go with this. This morning when I was reflecting and meditating on things, I was thinking more about this point of compression that I view our body as, right? Because it is. It takes all of the information, all of the data from the environment around me on a macromolecule level, all the way down to my atoms in this body, to universal elements like the Schumann resonance and things of that nature, right? It's bringing in all of the data. That's the compression point. So the body gathers all of that information into one location. And awareness, its primary function is to determine sameness from novelty, right? Status quo from this is new. If nothing is novel, if nothing is new, and everything is status quo as expected, running habitually as it should, then the body stays in its autopilot. The field stays stabilized. We keep going about our routine and our order, and I keep doing this because it stays flatline, right? That is the liminal, that's the Bardo, that's meditation, that is rest, that is stasis. That is no input coming into the field causing destabilization in the body. A choice point hasn't risen in the field, right? So there's compression and there's stabilization, right? And then we reach selection, right? So selection is our attention, which is different than awareness. Awareness is there. It occurs. It is the collection field. It's the net that is cast. And this little tuning fork, this calibration point, the stabilization field of my body, takes it all in, and when novelty arises, my attention kicks in. Now, awareness asks the question, does this belong? Does this fit the whole? Attention says, okay, this gets my energy or does it not get my energy? Do I enact this thing now? So it is the regulation response, right? It is the voice that says, well, this novel thing came up. What am I going to do with it now? Am I going to engage with this or not engage with it? So that's the selection point, right? That is our attention. Our attention creates the selection point based on what rises into our awareness and attracts it. So the selection gate, all of these portals, these choice points that we reach, such as, do I film today or not? Do I listen to music that represents morals I don't want to live in my life, or do I listen to music that supports a mental state that will help me reach my goals? Those are choice points, and they're as big as major life choices to as small as, am I going to take time to center my breathing in the middle of this argument before I blow it up? Those are choice points. Am I going to eat that snack from the convenience store instead of the carrots I packed in my lunch? Those are choice points. That is what attention does. So awareness and attention are working in this field of selection together. And then we have the synchronization gate, right? And most of us who work in the spiritual field are familiar with synchronicity, and we use this to give us messages, to talk to our guides and whatever we want to call it, whether you prefer a psychiatric lens where you're talking to your subconscious, or you prefer the more esoteric lens where you're talking to a being. People use synchronicity to determine their alignment. But what nobody really asks is, what are you aligning with? When we say truth by itself in just that statement is very ambiguous. And it gets weaponized as such in conversation. Well, you need to speak your truth. But then there's no guidance on what that is, right? So your truth in one situation might be, these are just the facts and the data that I know occurred, right? It was raining that day. This person was this tall. They were wearing a red shirt. That is the facts. That's the data. That is one way of processing the information. But then there's the other side of the truth where your emotional response comes in. An emotional response is pure in its response. It's telling us whether we are aligned or with our truth or not. But unless you have clearly defined what your truth is, your mind doesn't know what to do with that. It just says, okay, I'm not in alignment, but what am I not in alignment with? And if I'm not in alignment with this thing I don't know, where am I going to align it next? And we get stuck there. And that's where we get those pendulum swings, right? And synchronization layer is our value handshake. Our truths are the values that we live in, the principles and conditions that we set up on ourselves and say, this is how I'm going to live my life by, right? We live in a field of love. Love is not a value. Love is a state. It is a field. It is a field of relationship and connection. And you can't live as a compression point without relationship with everything that comes into be compressed. So love is not a value, it is a state. It is a field. It is inarguable. What is arguable is how you express it in your form and in your life. And that you need to clearly define. Does love for you look like Mother Teresa's level of effort, where you become a nun and dedicate your life to serving food to the homeless in relatively meager conditions yourself? Or does love include a little bit more luxury? That is your truth. And it is defined by value. It isn't ambiguous. It is very specific to you. And even if you haven't put words to it, because words are just containers for the ineffable, that's why they are so squishy and wiggly and so easy to weaponize against us and contain us, because they're squishy and subjective. They aren't fixed points, and we treat them like they are. The only fixed point in the universe is you, because you are the compression point of consciousness in this moment. So you are the only fixed point. Everything comes into your awareness, gets filtered through your attention, your choice system. And then based on the choices that you make, they get sent back out into the field of recognition, which is where the energies outside of us go, oh, now this person, this point that we are all gravitating around in your awareness, has now changed the rule. Well, I can't play by that rule, so out of the field of awareness they go. Well, I can play by this new rule. This principle is in alignment with me, and so things come into our field of awareness. But you are the fixed point in all of that. In your field of awareness, you are the fixed point. You are the thread that ties all of it together. And your attention is the tool, but you can only appropriately use your attention if you have clearly defined your values. And then your body, which picks up the sensory data and tells you whether you're aligned with it or not. And you'll know if your definition is quite right or not by what your body tells you, because it already came with them imprinted into it. It is wired to recognize your divine truth, which is not limited by word or scale or your ability to articulate it in any way. Your body knows what your soul came to do. So when your body is destabilized, your attention and your awareness are not lined up. They are in juxtaposition to each other somewhere. Something has came into your awareness and your attention made a choice, and they did not create actions that supported the value you chose. And that's what calibration is, right? So we perform an action. It has a consequence because that's the response from the field of recognition. It rearranges things around us in order to match the frequency we just sent out, and then comes back. And that is our consequence or our harvest, right? Whether we chose an alignment or out of alignment with our values determines whether we see it as boon or bust. And so the consequence comes in, and a lot of us will react by going, oh, well, that didn't work, so I'm going to correct. And then I'm going to correct. And then I'm going to correct. And that creates the pendulum, which is really calibration, right? Because eventually those swings get smaller and smaller until we hit our center, and then we become our value in being, right? Then we become as close to angelic as you believe you're capable of. But all an angel is a purified principle and value given being. You can do that by calibrating. But we get stuck on the pendulum because we over-identify with the wound. Like we feel the consequence, and we revert back to that. I am hurt, I am injured, it was this, that, and the other. It was these things in my field of awareness that caused the injury, not the misalignment between our awareness and our attention. Our awareness brings things to us. Here's one thing that represents honesty. Here's another thing that represents deception. There's some dissonance here, and our attention gets drawn in, and we go, oh, well, this looks easy and comfortable, and this is causing me panic. I better fix this. And so we pour into that, and we try to fix this. And then it bites us because it was a snake the whole time. And we keep doing that instead of just going, we shouldn't. This was the one where my body felt stabilized and felt ease, and it should have gone that way, right? So that's what calibration is learning how to do that dance. Right? We're not broken, we're learning. The trauma culture has really got us stuck living in our wounds and in our past, and in this effort to fix everything outside of us, when what is broken inside of us is our ability to make meaning for ourselves in our own values. We have outsourced the definition of what we value, and therefore our identities, to other people. And this was conditioned into us as children. And it's no fault of the systems or anybody's. It's actually a natural result of the way we are born and formed, right? An awake being of light, a point of awareness that is awareness but has never experienced the body before, comes in, depends on the people who have experience with the calibrator, knows how to run the equipment, so it comes expecting us to teach it how to run the equipment, and instead we try to teach it how to contain consciousness. We try to shape their mind instead of teaching them how to live with their body, their calibration instrument. And then we're teaching them identities, right? The babies learn this without our real effort. That's why we have to work on consciousness. The first time, like, children are not born with a fear of snakes or rodents. They learn that simply by looking at the reactions of the adults around them. If an infant encounters a snake, their awareness says, ooh, this is new. I haven't seen it before, but there's an expert in the field. I'm going to look at them. And if the expert is going, baby goes, and there's fear that infant will then carry for the rest of their life and never know where it came from, even though they have no experience of ever being injured by a snake. One has never tried to eat them. And they learned it off of a facial expression on a caregiver when they were infants. You have so much of that programming, it doesn't even make sense to try to unpack all of that. All that can really be done at that level and that skill, like those things, that one, I'm backtracking a little because that was silly and we don't need to address that, right? We want to address the relational traumas that are blocking love in our lives. It's not the relationships. It's because we're focused on the wound, and when we're presented with the choices, instead of choosing the alignment with the values, we look at the thing that doesn't line up with our values and say, I must force it to fit. And that was never, we weren't supposed to try to force it to fit. We were supposed to select from the materials we wanted to paint with today. And if you wanted to paint with red and not green, you don't try to turn green into red. That's what we're doing. And then we get stuck on that pendulum because that damn green won't turn red. It's not your point of awareness. It's not your compression point. Their compression point is doing something completely different than yours. The challenges in our lives do not come from anything outside of us. They come from our ability to take the information, the input that channels into our awareness through our compression point, apply our attention to it in order to choose the actions that expand more of what we want. But instead we choose actions to try to make the things that didn't fit, which in the field of recognition is a choice for more of that thing. Because all the field of recognition sees is, oh, they wanted red, but they chose green. So they must really want green, so I'm going to give them more green. It's that simple. It really is all that simple. You can put whatever labels, titles, you can interact and develop a relationship with your awareness and attention and your mind and your heart and your body and soul, all of those things. You can do all of that in any way that you want to. The subconscious speaks in sign and symbol. And it is all about relationship. The field is love. So it is relationship. Interaction with all of these things is the point. So we're not adjusting the field. There was never anything wrong with your ability to love or others' ability to love you. The problem was you were supposed to make a choice in line with your values, and you chose to try to fix the thing that was never designed to line up with your value. And you chose to ignore the thing that was. So, how do we get better at this? We start working on listening to our bodies more. Because when our minds don't, and it's the trap of the mind. The mind wants to analyze and interpret what the body has already seen, right? Our body, when we are in alignment, is stable. When we are out of alignment with our truths, it experiences physical discomfort, headaches, stomach conditions, muscle problems, fatigue, autoimmune disorders. When we are out of alignment in our awareness and attention at the selection gate, we're getting stuck on the pendulum of the feedback system. And we're looking at this as things that we need to repair outside of us in order for us to experience things fully. That isn't the truth. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. That isn't the truth. We aren't here to correct the things outside of us. They are just choice points. Choice points. Yes or no's. Your body knows. So we correct this by listening to our body. When you are having an experience and your body is sending you fight or flight signals, does it necessarily mean run? No. That is where we pause, breathe, check in with our nervous system, check the weather of our thoughts, right? Am I spiraling from pattern, picking green when I want red, and creating this dissonance because I don't recognize peace? You know, there's pausing and breathing, checking with the body, scraping off the narratives of the stories these people have told us. You know, the only difference between anxiety and excitement is the label we give it, the label we give the feeling, the thoughts that we hold in our head. But to the body, they are the same. So if you are in a negative mindset, you're going to experience it as anxiety. But if you are in an empowered mindset, you're going to experience it as excitement. And that is all based on what you're doing with your compression point and your selection gate, your choices. Are you aligning with your values? If you value honesty, are you practicing deception? If you value honesty, are you allowing other people to lie to you or to behave deceptively without addressing it? You know, this is it. That's all it is. And you've got consciousness. You can learn all the other fun things. You can expand it in whatever direction you want to. The field of recognition is out there waiting for you to take those inputs, make your choices, and live the actions that expand those things so that it can keep giving you more. It wants to give you more, but you keep choosing the same. You're never going to get other people to align with your values, the way that you live them, because they live their own, because values are not concrete, they're not solid, they're not fixed. They have core features that are expressed in each individual's nuance. Right? That's why we're given nuance. It is our creative flavor, it is our signature. It isn't supposed to become our cage. It isn't supposed to become our justification or validation. It is what makes Picasso different from Rembrandt. I was going to say Picasso and Mozart, but then I was crossing fields, and for some reason my brain didn't want to pull up another artist. So anyway, these are the areas we're getting stuck. We're getting stuck in the synchronization layer. We're getting stuck in our choice points because we don't know what our values are. We don't know what they look like. We don't know what they feel like. And the way to determine that is you ask your body. Sit in meditation and say, what does a yes feel like? And imagine a time when someone has told you yes to something that you really wanted. And that is what your body's yes feels like. Think of a time when you got something you really didn't want, and that is your body's no. You can ask your body, what does it feel like? And then remember a time when it did, and your body will bring up those sensations, and that is your answer. And that is how you learn to listen to your body, because your body is the calibrator. It is the tool that lets you align your attention and your awareness. And when you allow your calibrator to function, you live in resonance. And that's all I have.